Hey guys, it's Confcog Studios here, and in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my full thoughts on how SkyRush is in 2024 with the brand new Restraints. We got the opportunity to ride it a bunch of times yesterday at Hersheypark's opening day. Personally, I was able to ride it 6 times. All of those rides were in either row 7 or row 8, and they were all on wing seats, so I think I got a pretty good feel for how the ride is with the new Restraints, and honestly, it has changed the ride a lot more than I expected. Not necessarily in a bad way either. I think it's definitely overall a positive change. But in this video, I'm going to be going over every aspect of what they did to SkyRush, how it changes the ride so that those of you who maybe loved SkyRush before can continue to love it and know where to ride, where you're going to get the best experience. And those of you who didn't really like SkyRush in the past know how to enjoy it, because now it's very easy to enjoy the ride. These restraints are some of the most comfortable restraints I've ever seen on a coaster. They feel exactly like you're sitting in Velocicoaster, Islands of Adventures, Trains, or Pantheon. If you've ridden either of those rides, you know exactly what to expect. These restraints sit super comfortably, they fit perfectly. Even when you're stapled, you can get airtime, as you can see here by this demonstration. They're really just immaculate restraints, and to see them come to this ride, which for so long had such a terrible reputation with having these thigh-crushing restraints, is great to see. And truly props to Hersheypark for putting the money in to invest in a ride that's 12 years old now, that wasn't always super popular because it was very uncomfortable, and they're putting the money in, and they not only changed the restraints but did so much to the station, which really does not go unnoticed. Props to Hersheypark, they did a great job with all that. So before I get into the actual ride experience, I do want to touch on a few of the thematic elements they have added, because they really do go a long way. So previously SkyRush really didn't have much of a theme. It was pretty much just the name, and the station was fairly generic, but it looked good, it was very well presented. But now they have completely changed it around, so it kind of has like an airplane theme. The whole station is almost kind of imagined to be like an airport. You hear all the airport sounds, like the little beeping and everything when the gates open and when the seatbelt light comes on when you're on an airplane. All of that is there, and there's a lot of like ambient airplane noises in the area around SkyRush now. And when you dispatch, you get this absolutely amazing looking light demonstration with sound and everything. And I'll play it right now for you guys so you know what I'm talking about. 2012. So as you see, you get all those lights on top with the arrows flashing, all the lights going crazy, you get an airplane noise. It is so cool and really does add to the ride experience. You wouldn't think something like that would, but it really gets you hyped up, especially as you start flying up that lift hill. And the lift hill has not slowed down at all, which is great. They also added a new sign on the back of the station that has the new logo and everything, and it looks really good, especially at night because it glows up and looks so cool, especially when you're sitting on the brake run. You have a lot of lights kind of illuminated at you. It really does feel like you're back at an airport. And they currently do not have an actual sign up for SkyRush. I imagine it'll probably be added later on in the season, but a lot of people were kind of not a big fan of the new logo, but I think it looks great, and especially now seeing it in the station and on the rides back of the station, I think it's definitely grown on a lot of people and looks great. They also put that new logo on the front of the train. No new merch with that logo quite yet, but I imagine later on in the season that will be a thing. Keep in mind the park just opened for the season yesterday. But with all that being said, I am going to go into the ride experience itself now. So of course, if you have been on SkyRush, you know that the most extreme seats are the wing seats, and the middle seats are still intense, but you're not going to get the same amount of force as you would on the wing seats, and that has never been more true than now. I personally didn't ride any middle seats because I wanted the most intense experience, but from those in my party who did ride in the middle seats, they said it was definitely not as intense as the wing seats. It's not necessarily meaning that you're not going to get the same airtime or positive G's, but when you're in the wing seat, you're getting more lateral forces, which is something SkyRush is known for when you're riding on the wing seats. You have elements like the Stengle Dive, the Twisted Airtime Hill, and they really send you flying laterally. When you're in the middle seats, you're not really going to get that. You're also elevated a little higher, so some of the forces are going to feel a bit different. So if you're looking for a more tame ride experience, definitely go for the middle seat, and you can ride pretty much anywhere in the train. Though, if you're in the back of the train, no matter what seat you're sitting in, you're definitely going to have a very intense experience. Nothing about the ride itself has changed. The drop still has that weird kink that throws you out of your seat, that really makes it so good. All the airtime still hits, and of course, considering it is still early on in the season, the ride was running fairly fast. It wasn't really slugging along. A lot of people were worried that maybe these restraints weighed less than the old restraints and it might run a little slower. I didn't really feel that at all. What I did notice though is that because these new restraints are so much more comfortable, some of the elements feel a bit different. So I'll get to that in a minute, but I'm going to start by just going through the whole ride experience with the restraints, whether you rode it when it had the original restraints or you rode it yesterday or you plan to ride it with these new restraints. Most of the ride experience is pretty much the same. So of course you have that amazing first drop, which if you want the full effects of that, sit in the back row. You will get some crazy ejector airtime. Then you have that first turn that makes you gray out. It is super intense. First airtime hill, which just ejects you out of your seat. Then you have that second turn, and this second turn is definitely where you're going to feel the most vibration or rattleness. The ride used to be known for having a pretty strong rattle, and I think it's definitely smoother this year. I'm not sure what they did, but it is significantly smoother, though you are still going to feel some vibrations going through that turn, especially if you're on a wing seat. They tend to be a little rougher than the middle seats, but again, nothing unbearable or anything. Then you have that second airtime hill, which again throws you out of your seat. Then you go through that turn and go into that stangle dive, which gives you some really good lateral forces. If you're sitting on a wing seat, you really have the freedom to just kind of stretch out and throw yourself around. It's really great. Then you go through that turn, the twisted airtime hill, again, some great laterals. Then you have that last little bunny hop, and then the turn and the up into the brakes. So there's SkyRush, still fairly short ride, but it really does pack a punch. Now I am going to go through a couple of the elements I noticed a bit of a different feeling on. So any element that focuses on lateral forces, like that stangle dive or the twisted airtime hill, the lateral forces, I wouldn't say they're not as pronounced, but they just feel different. The thing is that these new restraints and these new seats, they're more bucket style, so it kind of takes you in the seat more, so there's more lateral bracing on your side. Previously, SkyRush didn't really have much lateral bracing, so you could pretty much fly around left, right, and there was nothing there holding you, so you just kind of have a lot of freedom of movement. I'm not saying this restricts you more, but if you really want to get full lateral forces, you kind of have to lean forward a little bit, and then you can move around a little more, because when you're sitting all the way back, those bucket style seats kind of hold you in place pretty tight with the laterals. But again, that's not necessarily a knock, that's more so just an observation I've noticed. And I also noticed that towards the end of the ride, that last airtime hill, it used to feel a lot stronger in terms of ejector airtime, but I think that's almost an illusion, because back when SkyRush had the original restraints, your thighs were probably killing you by that point of the ride, so any bit of airtime would probably feel really strong because of all the pain on your thighs. But now that airtime hill definitely is not as strong as the first two airtime moments, and I think that's just because of the fact that the restraints aren't hurting you at all. They're so much more comfortable, so you don't really feel like it's as intense, even though it is the same as it used to be. So just something I noticed there. And another interesting thing is, if you rode SkyRush before they changed the restraints, you would know that on the brake run, they will pop the restraints up so that it kind of relieves your thighs. It still does this for some reason. I guess they didn't program it out, but it's kind of funny because you just unbuckle your seatbelt, which you usually do on the brake run anyway, and the restraint just goes flying up for a second. And it's pretty funny going back into the station with your restraint pretty high up. I'm not sure if they're going to keep that because it's not really needed anymore. It's still cool to have. It was definitely much more necessary back when it had the old restraints. But again, just another observation there. Overall, I am really happy with what Hersheypark did to SkyRush. I think that these changes are going to make the ride so much more popular and accessible to the general public, and even coaster enthusiasts who thought that the old restraints were too painful on the thighs. It really does show the best parts of SkyRush now that you can enjoy it with your hands up all the way, not worrying about having the restraint crush your thighs like it used to. And another quick note is that these restraints, they do come down on you during the ride, but it's nothing too egregious. And what I've noticed is even when you're completely stapled on the ride, you still have room to bounce up and down. That's how great these restraints are. You could be in there as tight as you possibly can and you're not going to feel pain on your thighs, and you still have wiggle room, which is one of the best things about these restraints. Meanwhile, with old SkyRush's restraints, your thighs would be in absolute agony if the restraint was stapled onto you. So I think this is overall just a really great change for the ride. It's going to make it a lot more accessible. I imagine we're going to see much longer lines for the ride, which isn't necessarily great for the coaster enthusiasts, but I think overall it's a great thing for Hersheypark, considering this is one of their flagship coasters. It's right there at the front of the park, and I think this adds a lot of longevity to the ride too. I'm sure it will continue thrilling riders at Hersheypark for many years to come with these changes, and I can't wait to see what else they wind up doing at the park, because if they're doing this to SkyRush, I imagine we're going to see a lot more enhancements around the park, which I am very excited to check out. But with that being said, guys, if you enjoyed this sort of analysis of SkyRush in 2024 with the brand new Restraints, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos coming soon to Hollywood Studios. Goodbye, guys.